Hello and welcome to another episode of the Subnet Show. I am your host today, Connor Daly, the man with the most cats in crypto, uh, not joined by my regular co-host, Gabriel Cardona. Unfortunately, Gabriel has been feeling a bit under the weather this week and had to take this week off, so he would love any well wishes if you can send him his way. But we have a special episode today. We were planning to talk about this with Gabriel, but I'm going to just talk about it with all of you. I have recently released, along with my team, a new piece of software in the Avalanche toolkit called the Avalanche-CLI, or the Avalanche Command Line Interface. And it's really cool, and it's taken off a little bit on social media the last week. And I wanted to just kind of take a deep dive and tell you guys what it is, just do a little quick demo and explain what my vision for it is. So this is something that really started a few months ago when I kind of made my transition from working on the dApps team to working on the Subnets team. And I was doing my very first work on Subnets, and I just kind of had some questions like, well, how do I spin up my Hello World subnet? Like, how do I spin up my test environment so I can test these new precompiles that I'm developing? And I really disliked all of the answers I got. For somebody that was super familiar with all of the conceptual elements of subnets and how they're supposed to work, I felt like, I should be able to pick up how to build with subnets very quickly. It shouldn't be much of a challenge for me because I'm already, so advanced. But it was a bit of a struggle. Like, I think just our tooling was not at a place where it's easy to spin up subnets to test with, where it's easy to make modifications to these subnets. So it's not actually super great to build with them. And so some of my initial thoughts was, okay, I'm the new guy in the room. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I don't have the penalty of already knowing how to do things. I'm figuring things out for the first time. Still have my fresh eyes. So let me try to use my fresh eyes to just write some documentation on everything that I learn from the beginner's perspective so that other people can hopefully use my learnings to write some better tutorials so that our developers can actually start building real subnets pretty quickly. And I started down the documentation route, but I still wasn't necessarily finding everything that I wanted to have available. And I just didn't think documentation was going to be enough. We were just asking people to jump through too many hoops. And we're asking them to understand and use too many repos. Because if you want to deploy an instance of the Subnet EVM, you have to currently be interacting with or managing Avalanche Go, that repo. You need to be working with Subnet EVM. You also need to be working with the network runner. You might also need some knowledge into Core ETH. You're also going to probably be using the Subnet CLI. So you literally have 5 repos that you need to keep in the back of your mind, or potentially actively be reading READMEs for or understanding the structure of to really be able to make your contributions. And that is just way too much, in my opinion. Subnets, if they're going to take off, they have to be easy. We have to be taking work away from the user, not giving them extra work just to get started at phase 1. And so I wanted to kind of rethink what the developer experience actually looked like. And so I just was wondering, could I throw together some tooling really quickly that would just automate a lot of this procedure for setting up subnets? And we talk a lot about Subnet EVM and how easy it is to spin up an EVM as a service, where basically you have the ability to customize your EVM via a JSON file, where you can just specify some configurations to say, okay, I want to turn on these precompiles, or I want to turn off these precompiles. But editing that process is also really annoying, but there's also some common things that I'd like to do and make it do quickly. So I had this idea of could I just throw together a quick little prototype that would streamline the process of creating that JSON file. So I could just kind of flip through a couple menus to say okay, I want this subnet to be customized this way. I want this subnet to be customized this way. And just save several of those configurations without having to just go through and edit text files. And so I did. I kind of like just put together a little proof of concept. I started showing it to some of the other people, at Ava Labs, and just kind of got their thoughts, and everybody was really excited about it. And very luckily for me, we had some developers who were freeing up, some time, and so we were able to kind of change up our priorities and actually assign some more tasking to this group, so that we were able to start development in earnest and throw 3 people behind it rather than just one. And we were able to make some really tremendous progress. And what we have today is just the beginning of what will be a long journey. It's very much a beta, maybe even an alpha product. But what it is, I guess if I haven't really been super explicit about that. So it's a tool for building and launching subnets, but it's also going to be a tool for launching validators and becoming a validator on subnets as well. So right now, my initial focus was, let's take the hello world subnet example, like the easiest, dumbest possible subnet you could make, and change the user experience so that you can launch that hello world subnet in 3 commands or less on the command line. Let's take away all of the hard, confusing terminology and configurations and just do things that are make assumptions about what the user wants, give them something that looks good out of the box so that they don't have to do a lot of guessing, and just give them guide rails so that if they don't know what they're doing, they'll end up with something safe and productive rather than something dangerous. Don't give them room to hang themselves. But at the same time, I also wanted the vision of this product to be very focused on having the ability for advanced subnet developers to really take off and run with it, to be able to use this as a tool to write custom VMs that we've never seen before, not just be an EVM as a service vehicle. So, a lot of different kind of user groups in mind, but the focus for the initial MVP release was on this hello world subnet for the absolute subnet beginner. And so my dream, what I was just thinking was, I really like Avalanche, just the tool's just called Avalanche, and then just have everything be English language based. So, you're typing words, you're not really typing commands so much. You don't need to provide any flags by default. There's no super verbose configurations. Everything is through wizards and menus. And then if you want to get more advanced, you can pass parameters to bypass some of the menus or do things that are a little more complicated. So my dream was just having Avalanche subnet create, Avalanche subnet deploy. And so that's what we built. And basically, so what this tool does right now is it only works with subnet EVM. We're going to expand to Spaces VM and Blob VM and totally custom VMs in the future. But right now we're focused on subnet EVM because that's what most people want and use when they think of subnets. And so when you do go through the subnet creation process, we walk you through the steps required to configure your JSON file to have your subnet set up. And so when you walk through this, you have to determine, what do we want the chain ID for the subnet to be? So for Avalanche, or for Ethereum, the chain ID is 1. For Fuji and Avalanche, the chain IDs are 4314 and 4313, I think. Oh, man. I'm spacing. I think that's right. It might be 44314. Oh, man. I haven't typed that in a while, and it is escaping my brain. You're catching me live on the fly here. I'm struggling. But 43114, I think that's what it is. 43114, 43113. But anyway, you have to determine the chain ID. Then you have to set up the gas configuration for your network. And this is another area where people have run into tons of pitfalls, is thinking about, what gas settings do I use? I want to go at least as fast as the C chain, but maybe faster. But how fast is too fast? I want to go the fastest possible. And these are kind of questions that we would get all the time in our subnet support channels. So we wanted to pick some reasonable defaults that would be safe, that if you go with one of our default configurations, you'll end up with something that's probably going to work for you and not collapse under its own weight. Then once you've set up your gas config, you need the ability to airdrop tokens to use the subnet. So basically, the subnet, the native, you need some of the native token to deploy contracts and to use the network. So you're going to want to airdrop some funds to yourself, maybe some members of your community. So we have an interface for you to do that. And then lastly, you have to set up your custom precompiles. So these are the customizations that we have made to the EVM that you can kind of optionally turn on and off. So there's currently 3 supported at launch. One is native contract minting. So this basically allows or contract to native minting. So this allows a smart contract to mint some of the subnet's native token directly. So this is something that you absolutely could not do on the C chain or on mainline Ethereum, because that would be saying basically a smart contract can mint a Vox or mint ETH, which you don't want to do because we have fixed supplies, fixed emission schedules. However, if you're a subnet that's coming over from an existing project where you might already have a token and you want to use that token as your native token, you're going to need to be able to bridge an existing ERC20 from the C chain over to your network. But that token that you're bridging is not the native token on the network. It's going to come out as an ERC20, not the native token. So you need to be able to switch from that ERC20 into the native token, or go into the native token directly. So you can have your bridge contract, instead of minting a wrapped ERC20, mint a native asset for you. So that's one of the custom precompiles. We also have the ability to lock down who can deploy contracts on the network to a whitelist. So this would allow you to say, if I'm creating my DeFi Kingdom subnet and I don't want somebody to deploy a random NFT marketplace of their own dApp on my subnet, I can make sure that I'm the only one who can deploy smart contracts, or my multisig is the only one that can deploy smart contracts. And lastly, there is another precompile to support transaction allow lists or transaction whitelists. So this actually restricts who can interact with the chain at all, as far as issuing transactions and querying the chain state. And so I wrote a Twitter thread about this a few months ago that was basically talking about how you could use this. So you could do it for something like, if you want to do kind of a KYC subnet where you're bringing people on one at a time, or if you just wanted to have kind of a trial period before you wanted to allow the whole world to use your network, you could kind of like whitelist a certain number of users to just come in and test your subnet before it goes on for a full public release. So those 3 precompiles are available at launch. And then what the tool does actually is it'll allow you to deploy to a local network, Fuji, or mainnet. So currently only the local network is supported and implemented. Fuji and mainnet are going to be our next big feature release that we're working on. So what this does is this uses a tool called the Avalanche Network Runner in the background that will spin up a 5-node staking network on your machine. So it'll basically create 5 containers with 5 instances of Avalanche Go running. And you'll actually create a real Avalanche network running on your computer with all 5 of those nodes messaging each other and using Avalanche consensus. You're not going to be talking to the rest of the Avalanche network. Everything will be self-contained. But basically, you can query that network and submit transactions. You can submit transactions to create a new subnet, to create a new blockchain on that subnet, and go through that whole API. So that's what we do for you. So when you do a local network deploy, we spin up a series of a 5-node staking network, then take the configuration that you've used to create your subnet, and we inject that into your local network. So we'll spin up a copy of the subnet for you, and then once it's all up and running, we will give you the information that you need to add that network to MetaMask so you can use it locally, or use it to hard hat if you want to deploy smart contracts, or you could even mess around with it yourself if you want to like do curl commands directly. So that's super useful. We also have a load simulator that we'll probably integrate one day. You can currently see it. I think it's with Subnet CLI. Yeah, so basically that's what the tool does today. It allows you to do some CRUD operations on those subnet configurations, so you can like update them, delete them. The other cool feature that I'll mention is that when you spin up your subnet, you can turn it off, and you can turn off your network, and it'll save the state of the network. So if you're done testing for the day and you need to shut down your computer, when you restart, all of that state will still be there. You do have to manually shut it down for that to happen. We don't autosave it in the background for you. But we can persist state, or you can clear it out and delete it. Right now you can only deploy one subnet at a time, but in a few weeks you'll be able to do multiple concurrent subnets running simultaneously. So this is something that I'm really excited about, and we have some other features coming soon. So right now we're focusing on thinking about doing the Fuji and mainnet deploys. Right now, if you'd like to take your subnet to mainnet or to Fuji from local, you'd have to use Subnet CLI, and that process is pretty long and arduous. So we want to try to see if we can make sensible decisions on behalf of the user to create a simpler path, or just give you menus to walk through so that you don't necessarily have to go through figuring out a bunch of like weird configurations. And we'd like to be able to support ledger deployments as well as simpler, just private key only deployments. Then after we get Fuji and mainnet deploys working, I think the next big feature that we're thinking about is package management, and integrating another Avalanche project called the Avalanche Package Manager to basically allow users to spin up validators and start validating subnets. And basically when you have the ability to, once you've published your subnet, once it's live and public, if you want other validators to join, well, how do you do that? One thing you have to do is you have to share the virtual machine that your subnet is running. So you could like host it on GitHub and have them download it, but we've been thinking it would be kind of cool to have like a package manager system where you can kind of publish your subnet, and then users can download the latest copy of the virtual machine and run all the configurations they need to just start validating locally. So you can just look up the subnet by name, for example. Or potentially you could use this kind of version management to track your own development. So we're going to be publishing lots of versions of Subnet EVM in the future, but you want to make sure that when your project updates, that you get the version you want. And if somebody releases a new version of Subnet EVM, it doesn't accidentally clobber the work that you've been doing, or something like that. So we want to have very smart version control so that developers can have a really good grasp on what versions they're running, update when they want and not when they don't want to, and stuff like that. And then we also just want to make sure that we have lots of support for custom VM development so that we can inspire that next generation of users who want to build the next EVM, or whatever that may look like. If it's an improved EVM, something totally different. If somebody wants to port Solana to Avalanche, if somebody wants to port Bitcoin to Avalanche, they can do that and use this tool to automate as much of their testing and development as possible. So, I got to throw out the caveats that this is all still very much a work in progress, so things change. So if something comes out a little bit differently, don't hold me to this exactly, but that's like kind of like the vision, the plan, and just try to make an experience that is approachable, that people can come to, people can learn from, and improve their skills. And I was quite tickled to see this week that people have really gone in on the idea of launching subnets, and they love having speed competitions for how to do so. And that's been super cool to see. And so, I think it's only going to get faster. It's only going to get easier. And the people deploying subnets are not also necessarily the world's greatest developers who have been doing this for 10 years. They're people who are having fun trying it out because it is an approachable tool, which is something that I'm really proud of. So apologies to the audio listeners for the next part, but I just kind of wanted to walk through some of the just different release pieces and show you guys what's going on. So the first thing I was going to show you is just pull up a copy. So this is the current GitHub repository for the project. And I'm not going to do any code walkthroughs or anything, but just kind of give you a tour of what we have. So, right now, if you're interested in checking this tool, just search Avalanche-CLI on GitHub. It's under the Avalabs account. We're growing more and more popular every day. And there's installation instructions. These are hopefully going to get a little bit better. It's a little bit complicated. But right now, all you have to do is run this install command, add the binary to your path, and then just start typing commands. So there's the Avalanche subnet commands and the Avalanche network commands, but this quick start will get you everything you need. Avalanche subnet create, Avalanche subnet deploy, and then when you're ready to stop, Avalanche network stop. That's all you need. And I'm super proud of that. It's super simple. People can understand that. But there will be a little bit more depth, and you can kind of see, we have explanations of what all the current commands do, how to use them, what some of the arguments are, and all that good stuff. And then some links to some other further documentation. But yeah, then there is the disclaimer here. Very much a beta release. Things are going to change. There are bugs, I know. So we're not necessarily guaranteeing everything will also stay super backwards compatible. But, we just wanted to get this out. We wanted to get it in people's hands. We wanted to get their feedback. We wanted to inspire them to start building. So, we didn't wait till the product was perfect. We waited till we had enough functionality for it to be useful and interesting. So, yeah, if you're interested in running this and checking it out, Avalanche-CLI on GitHub, that's the place to start. But now I thought I would do a little demo for you guys. So the first thing you have to do is... actually, hold on. Let me go up. I ran this once, so to give it a shot. So here you go. So this is what it's like if you actually want to, run the project. So the first thing you do, you can just run this little install command, and this is just going to download the latest release, which is super convenient. So no matter what the version is, that script will help you out. So that'll install it in your local bin directory. I also am going to say that this project currently does not work on Windows. It is Mac and Linux only. However, I'm actually running this on Windows right now. You can do that by using the Windows subsystem for Linux. So I use the Ubuntu Windows subsystem for Linux, and that works pretty well. So that'll install it in your local bin directory. There's ways to do a custom install location, and that'll create this Avalanche binary for you. You can use it directly by just doing like a / command, or you can add it to your path by doing something like export path gets print working directory : path. Oops. So now if you do that, you can run, and those commands are in the README. You can do Avalanche subnet list. Nice. I actually already created one just to test. I forgot about that. So these are the subnets you've created. So you can do Avalanche subnet delete test. You can delete that subnet so you can see, okay, now we have no subnets created. So now we can start from scratch. So let's create a subnet. So Avalanche create Connor subnet. So now this is where you can see, like, we're starting small, but we have the genesis of some more ideas here. So we'd love to add a bunch of different VM templates. So when you create your subnet, you can choose what kind of subnet do you want. Do you want an EVM subnet? Do you want a Solana-based subnet? Do you want a Spaces VM subnet? So you can imagine we're going to fill this out with every VM that we can get our hands on. So right now we just have subnet EVM and just some nods ahead to be able to doing custom ones that you import. So the first thing that you need to do is add your subnet's chain ID. So ours can be, we'll do our 911 subnet. You do want this value to be unique, and there's a website, I believe it's called chainlist.org, that will show you who has registered various chain IDs before. So you need your subnet's chain ID to be unique so that your subnet is secure against replay attacks. So there's a blurb about that in the documentation if you want to take a look. So the next thing is the gas config. So this is about how you want to set the fees on your subnet. So everybody wants low fees for their subnet. They want it to be fast. So we provide here 3 different settings, and we also allow you to customize your fee config entirely if you really know what you're doing. But this is what we recommend. Honestly, low is the best option. It's the most conservative, but it's sustainable. So it's currently what the C-chain uses. And this isn't a slow, medium, fast kind of menu. Each of these is a trade-off, because the faster your network is, the more gas you can use, the more storage you're going to burn through, and the hotter you're going to run on your validator instances. You're going to require more processing power. So it will be more expensive to maintain. So it's not just faster is better. It is going to be higher cost to you as well. So especially if you're not going to production, if you're just messing around, I would just do low. So next is the airdrop that I mentioned earlier. So how do you want to distribute tokens? So one thing that you can do, you can, if you go through this custom approach, you can specify addresses to drop to. I can hold on. I can grab an address here and show you. All right, so you can pick an address, and then how many AVAX units do you want to drop to that address? So it's not in way, it's in the full 10 to 18 numbers. So if I want to airdrop 100 tokens to that address, I can do that. Airdrop more tokens? No. One thing I will say is you could also do this where you, we actually have a test key that's a fairly common key that we sometimes call it the EWOC key that we'll provide for you. So there's a default option that will automatically drop you 1 million tokens to this special address. We'll also print out at the end that private key so you can import it into MetaMask or into Hardhat or whatever, and it's a well-compromised key, so just whatever you do, don't use it in production or anything like that. So we'll just airdrop to the default address, and then right now we have our custom precompiles. So like I mentioned, there's 3 that we can add. Apologies if you can hear some random Windows noises in the background. So just for example, for one of these, you can show, it basically requires adding admin addresses, and each admin can determine, they can add and remove other admins as well on chain. So you can add admin addresses, you can preview who your admins are, you can remove admins, or you can just cancel. But we'll say we'll add this one. Oh, do you want to add any extra precompiles? No, we're good. All right, so we created a Genesis. And so now we can do this describe command will show us the Genesis that we've generated. This just gives us a little summary that shows us, kind of what we created and just describes some of the details. So this is the actual gas config. This is the airdrop. These are the precompiles we've set up. If we list it out, we can see that we have this subnet created, and then we can also we can describe this guy, and we can actually dump the actual Genesis that we're using with the -- Genesis flag if you need it for any reason. Okay, so now let's actually deploy our subnet. So we can come here, we can do Avalanche subnet deploy Connor subnet. So now you can see these are the options. Like we'd say, you can deploy to local network, Fuji, or mainnet. Right now, we've only implemented local, but you can see this is kind of like what it'll look like if you want to deploy a longer running test or production. You can do Fuji or mainnet. But let's just do local. So right now, the first thing that we're going to do is download some of the missing packages. So we have to download Avalanche Go, and that's going to start running the 5-node staking network on your machine. So now the network's been booted. Now we just have to wait to actually create the subnet. It takes a few seconds because the network itself needs to bootstrap, and then there's actually a small annoying bug in Avalanche Go. It's not a bug necessarily, but an annoying behavior that when you add a new subnet, you have to restart the endpoints. And so we actually have to bring up the 5-node staking network, deploy the subnet, then restart the subnet. So that's why it takes so long. But we have some fixes in the pipe to speed some of this up. And eventually, I think we'll remove that restart requirement from Avalanche Go so that we can do this a bit faster. But yeah, huge shout out here to Fabio and Felipe, who have been helping me, and they've been doing tons of this development. They have some really cool stuff in the pipes to speed this up, and they've just been fantastic to work with as well. So hopefully, usually this process takes like 40 seconds to like maybe 2 minutes. So the first time you do it, it'll take a little bit longer because you have to do some downloads and bring down or bring up the network. So it definitely will speed up over time with subsequent releases, and even just doing it a couple times if the network's already running, it'll be faster. So hopefully I don't have to kill too much time. And again, apologies audio listeners, but you can check this out on YouTube if you're interested, because I think it is pretty cool. And though many of you have probably seen some of these videos on Twitter. Okay, all right, here we go. This is great. So now our network finished deploying, and so now we're kind of giving you the details, what went down here. So the network is ready. So like I said, there's a 5-node staking network available. So now we have 5 endpoints that you could use. So this is a URL that you can plug into MetaMask, that you could plug into Hardhat, that you could use to start actually deploying smart contracts, interacting with your chain. Here's another copy of that URL. We also tell you about your airdrop. So this is the address you airdrop to, and you gave yourself 1 million tokens. And if you do use our special key, we will print out the private key for you to import. So this is our special, well-known private key. If you had chosen a different address, we would not be printing out the private key. The name of the subnet, the chain ID, and then the token label, which in the next release, I believe we're going to update it so that you can actually customize your token label here. But that's what creating a subnet looks like. And then when you're done for the day, you can do Avalanche network stop. That'll turn everything off. And then if you do Avalanche network start, it's going to turn it back on. And it's actually going to restore the exact same state. So your subnet's already deployed. So if you want to go home for the day, turn off your computer, all of that state will still be there, and you can keep going where you left off. This will just take a second to do, but that's really it. That's Avalanche-CLI as it is now, and just a little bit of a peek into the future of what it hopefully will be. So thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Subnet Show. So I have been your host, Connor Daly. So you can follow me on Twitter at DAS_Connor, DAS_CONNOR. And yeah, check out Avalanche-CLI. There will be a link in the description as well. I'd love if you have any feedback, any friction, anything that feels too hard or confusing, let me know, because I'm building this tool for you guys, and I want to hear what's confusing and what could be better. So definitely would love any feedback on that. So as we like to say here, from Snowflake to Avalanche and through consensus to the stars. Thank you so much, everybody.